Ladies and gentlemen, listen to me very carefully. You've been lied to. Society has programmed you to believe that love is attention, that love is validation, that love is endless reassurance. But that's not how it works in the real world. Because a man who truly loves you will ignore you. Wait, let that sink in. I know what you're thinking. How can love and ignorance exist in the same space? But that's because you've been conditioned to seek love the wrong way. You've been told that a man who texts you 24/7, who chases you, who never lets you feel an ounce of uncertainty, is the one who loves you the most. A man who truly loves you will not chase you because he understands that love is not about pursuit, but about alignment. He knows that a woman who is meant for him will recognize his value without him having to prove it through desperate attempts to win her attention. A man of high value does not waste his energy convincing someone of his worth because his actions already demonstrate it. The world has conditioned you to believe that if a man is not constantly calling, texting, or begging for your attention, he must not care. But that is a lie. The men who chase relentlessly, who flood your phone with messages, who make themselves available at your every whim, these are the men who have nothing else going for them. Their greatest achievement is you, and that is not a compliment. That is a red flag. A man who has placed you at the center of his existence has no direction. He is lost, looking for purpose in you instead of in himself. And if he has no purpose of his own, he will never be able to lead, protect, or provide for you in the way that a true man should. A man who truly loves you understands that his love is not proven through the number of times he checks in, but through the foundation he is building. He doesn't need to chase because he is already moving forward, upward towards something greater than temporary affection. He is consumed by a mission bigger than himself, and if you are the right woman, you will recognize that his distance is not neglect, but devotion. Devotion to his vision, his purpose, and ultimately his ability to be the man you need him to be. Weak men chase because they fear losing you. Strong men focus because they know they are irreplaceable. The difference between the man who constantly texts you and the man who occasionally ignores you is that one is seeking validation while the other is seeking greatness. A man of greatness does not prioritize your momentary comfort over his long-term vision. He is not ignoring you to hurt you. He is ignoring you because he is crafting the life that will make your future secure. You have been trained to associate love with pursuit, with instant gratification, with constant attention. But a man who truly loves you will not engage in meaningless games. He will not fight for your approval like a desperate contestant in a competition. He will stand firm in his purpose, knowing that if you are truly the woman for him, you will understand why he cannot be at your beck and call. His love is not measured in texts and calls. It is measured in the empire he is building, the discipline he is sharpening, the obstacles he is conquering. Love is not about how often he reassures you. It is about how solid he makes you feel without saying a word. The man who is truly in love with you is not the one who floods you with sweet words, but the one who makes you feel secure in his silence. He does not chase because he does not need to. His presence is felt even in his absence. His energy is known even when he is not around. His love is a force, not a fleeting emotion. A man who chases has already lost. He has placed you above his own mission, above his own growth, above the very thing that makes him valuable. And if he sacrifices his purpose for you, he will eventually resent you. The moment a man loses himself in the pursuit of another person, he weakens. His obsession turns into dependence, his love turns into neediness, and his confidence turns into insecurity. And when a man is insecure, he is no longer a protector. He is a liability. The man who is truly meant for you will not be the one chasing you, begging for your time, overwhelming you with attention. He will be the one who stands firm in his mission, knowing that his greatness will naturally draw the right woman to him. He understands that a queen does not need to be pursued. She needs to be aligned with a king who is already ruling his domain. He knows that true love is not found in desperation, but in power. You do not need a man who spends his days trying to keep your attention. You need a man who spends his days becoming someone worth your attention. You do not need a man who fights for your validation. You need a man whose very presence commands respect. You do not need a man who proves his love through endless texts. You need a man who proves his love through the life he is building. The reason most women fall for the wrong men is because they confuse attention with intention. Just because a man is available does not mean he is capable. Just because a man is present does not mean he is powerful. Just because a man is chasing does not mean he is worth catching. The most dangerous man you can be with is not the one who is busy creating his empire, but the one who has nothing else to do but chase you. Because a man without purpose will eventually make you his purpose. And that kind of love will suffocate you. A strong man will make you question his love, not because he does not care, but because he refuses to play the games of the weak. He will not stroke your ego for the sake of temporary comfort. He will not neglect his purpose just to make you feel secure in the moment. He will love you by building himself, by elevating his mind, by preparing his kingdom. And if you cannot handle his focus, his discipline, his devotion to something greater than you, then you were never meant to stand beside him. If a man is too available, he is not valuable. If a man is too eager, he is not in control. If a man is too focused on you, he is not focused on himself. And a man who is not focused on himself cannot lead, cannot protect, cannot build. You do not want a man who needs to be needed. You want a man who is already complete without you, so that when he chooses you, it is not from a place of lack, but from a place of power. The greatest love is not found in pursuit. It is found in purpose. A man who is truly meant for you will not be the one chasing you like a lost boy. He will be the one standing in his power, knowing that if you are the right woman, you will meet him there. The right man will not prioritize your momentary need for attention over his eternal need for greatness. And if you truly understand what love is, you will respect that. Because a man who is focused on his vision is a man who will create a life where you never have to worry again. You have a choice. Settle for a man who chases you today but has no future, or align with a man who ignores you today because he is building one. Neediness is not love, it is weak. It is the symptom of a man who has no foundation, no purpose, no identity outside of you. And a man who has no identity outside of you will soon become a burden that you never asked for. He will suffocate you with his insecurities, drown you in his emotional dependence, and eventually turn the love you thought you wanted into a cage you can't escape from. A man who truly loves you does not seek validation from you. He does not beg for reassurance. He does not crumble when you do not give him the attention he craves. Because love is not about desperation. Love is not about filling a void. Love is about standing strong on your own and choosing another person from a place of power, not from a place of fear. When a man is needy, he is not choosing you, he is clinging to you. And there is nothing romantic about a man who clings. You have been conditioned to think that a man who is obsessed with you is the man who loves you the most. But the truth is, a man who is obsessed with you is a man who has nothing else. And if he has nothing else, he will make you his everything. That might sound poetic, but in reality it is suffocating. Because when you become a man's everything, you also become his only source of happiness, his only source of validation, his only reason for existence. And no human being should ever carry that weight. A weak man will call you 100 times a day, not because he loves you, but because he is terrified of being alone with himself. A weak man will constantly check in, not because he cares, but because he cannot function without your approval. A weak man will flood you with attention, not because he is strong in his love, but because he is weak in his own mind. He does not love you, he needs you. And love that is rooted in need is not love at all. It is dependency, it is fear, it is weakness disguised as affection. The strongest men are the ones who love you without losing themselves. They do not need you to complete them, because they were never incomplete to begin with. They do not chase you because they know their worth is not measured by whether or not you choose them. They do not beg for your attention because they are too busy building a life worth living. A man who is strong in his purpose does not fall apart if you do not text him back. A man who is strong in his mind does not question his worth if you do not give him constant reassurance, because his confidence does not come from you, it comes from within. A needy man is dangerous because his love is not about you, it is about what you can give him. He is not looking for a partner, he is looking for a savior. He is not trying to love you, he is trying to escape himself. And when a man is running from himself, he will eventually drag you down with him. He will demand more and more of your energy, your time, your emotional strength, until you have nothing left to give. And when you finally collapse under the weight of his neediness, he will blame you for not loving him enough. A man who constantly seeks validation from you is a man who does not validate himself. And if he does not validate himself, he cannot lead, he cannot protect, he cannot provide. Because leadership requires confidence. And confidence is impossible when your self-worth depends on someone else's approval. A man who is needy in love is weak in life. He is easily shaken, easily broken, easily controlled by his emotions. And a man who is controlled by his emotions is not a man you can depend on. You want a man who is strong enough to walk alone. A man who does not crumble when you are not around. A man who does not need you to make him feel whole, but instead chooses you because he is already whole. That is real love. That is strength. That is the kind of man who will not only love you, but protect you, elevate you, and create a life where you feel safe. A needy man will make you feel like his queen today, but he will become your burden tomorrow. A needy man will give you all his time today, but he will resent you for it when he realizes he has nothing else. A needy man will prioritize you over everything, but when his life falls apart, he will expect you to fix it. And if you cannot, he will blame you. Real love is not about obsession. It is about security. It is about a man who can stand on his own 2 feet, who does not need you but chooses you. It is about a man who can function without you but still wants to build with you. It is about a man who has a vision, a mission, a purpose, and understands that love is not about filling a void, but about growing together. If a man is constantly seeking your approval, he does not have his own. If a man is constantly afraid of losing you, he does not trust in his own value. If a man is constantly making you the center of his world, it is because he has no world of his own. And if he has no world of his own, he will eventually make your world smaller just to keep you with him. A man who is truly strong will love you with confidence, not fear. He will give you space without feeling threatened. He will trust you without insecurity. He will build his life while still making you a part of it. And when he loves you, it will not feel like a burden, it will feel like freedom. Because real love does not trap you, it empowers you. It does not suffocate you, it strengthens you. It does not beg for attention, it commands respect. A weak man's love is heavy because it comes with expectations you were never meant to carry. A strong man's love is light because it is built on trust, not desperation. A weak man will chase you because he does not trust that you will stay. A strong man will walk his path knowing that if you are meant to be there, you will be. Love is not about proving yourself. Love is not about constant reassurance. Love is not about begging, chasing, or needing. Love is about strength. It is about power. It is about 2 people who do not complete each other, but instead complement each other. And that kind of love can only exist when a man is whole within himself. If a man is needy, he is not ready for you. If a man is weak, he cannot protect you. If a man is desperate for your love, he does not love himself. And a man who does not love himself will never be able to love you the way you deserve. A high-value man builds, he doesn't beg. He does not waste his energy chasing someone who does not see his worth, because he knows his value is not determined by another person's validation. A man of true power does not beg for love, for attention, for approval. He creates a life that demands respect. He understands that begging is the language of the weak, and weakness has no place in the life of a man destined for greatness. He does not sit around waiting for someone to choose him. He chooses himself first, his mission first, his purpose first. And in doing so, he becomes the kind of man who never has to chase, because everything he desires is naturally drawn to him. A weak man begs because he has nothing to offer but his neediness. A weak man chases because he has nothing of substance to attract you with. A weak man pleads for love because he has not built himself into the kind of man who commands it. When a man has not invested in his own growth, in his own power, in his own vision, all he has left is desperation. He tries to win you over with words instead of actions, with promises instead of proof, with attention instead of value. But attention is cheap and value is rare. A man of value does not have time to beg because he is too busy becoming something greater. A high-value man does not need to beg for a woman's time because his time is too valuable to be wasted. He is building his future, expanding his knowledge, sharpening his skills. He is not sitting by the phone waiting for a response, wondering if he is enough. He already knows he is enough. He knows his worth is not measured by who stays or who leaves. He knows that love is not about begging someone to see his value. It is about embodying that value so fully that the right people recognize it instantly. A man who begs has already lost. The moment he starts pleading for attention, for love, for validation, he has placed himself beneath the very person he is trying to win over. He has handed over his power, surrendered his dignity, and shown that he does not believe in his own worth. And a man who does not believe in his own worth cannot expect anyone else to believe in it either. Begging is an admission of weakness, and weakness is repellent to those who seek strength. No woman wants a man who grovels at her feet, who is willing to do anything just to be chosen. A woman wants a man who stands firm in his value, who knows that his presence is a privilege, not a desperate plea. A high-value man does not chase because he understands the laws of attraction. He knows that the things meant for him will align with him effortlessly. He knows that a woman who truly recognizes his worth will not need to be convinced, persuaded, or pursued endlessly. She will see it in the way he moves, in the way he speaks, in the way he carries himself. She will be drawn to his power, not because he begged for her attention, but because he radiated a presence so undeniable that she could not ignore it. Weak men think that the louder they beg, the more they will be heard. Strong men understand that true power is silent, undeniable, and magnetic. A man who is truly on his path does not have to prove himself with words. His action speaks for him. His success speaks for him. His discipline speaks for him. His confidence speaks for him. He does not need to ask for respect because respect is the natural consequence of his character. He does not need to beg for love because love is a byproduct of his greatness. A man who is focused on building does not have time for games, for desperation, for chasing people who are not meant for him. He is not looking to be saved by love. He is looking to create a life where love can thrive. He is not looking for a woman to complete him. He is looking for a woman who can walk beside him as an equal. And that kind of man does not come from begging. It comes from building. A weak man will waste his days trying to win over someone who does not want him, instead of using that time to become someone they regret losing. A weak man will sit around hoping, waiting, pleading, instead of standing up and taking control of his destiny. A weak man will spend his energy proving himself to someone who does not see his value, instead of investing that energy into becoming so powerful that his value is undeniable. A man who builds is a man who understands that his worth is not negotiable. He does not lower his standards to fit into someone else's life. He raises his standards and lets the right people rise to meet him. He does not shrink himself to be more palatable. He expands, grows, evolves, knowing that those who are truly meant for him will be drawn to his evolution. He does not waste time chasing validation because he validates himself through his achievements, his discipline, his vision. When a man is truly building, he does not have time for desperation. His focus is on growth, on mastery, on becoming the best version of himself. He is in the gym strengthening his body, in the books sharpening his mind, in the world creating his legacy. He is not sitting in his emotions crying over lost love, dwelling on rejection, because he knows that every moment spent in self-pity is a moment stolen from his greatness. He knows that every second wasted on begging is a second that could have been used to build something unstoppable. A high-value man does not ask for permission to be great. He does not wait for someone to validate his existence. He does not seek approval from those who do not see his worth. He simply becomes so undeniable that the world has no choice but to take notice. And in that process, he naturally attracts everything he once thought he had to chase. A weak man looks at rejection as failure. A strong man looks at rejection as redirection. A weak man sees being ignored as an insult. A strong man sees being ignored as an opportunity to level up. A weak man begs for love. A strong man becomes the kind of man who never has to beg, because the right people recognize his value without him having to say a word. A man who is truly building does not fear being alone. He understands that solitude is not loneliness, but preparation. He knows that every moment he spends improving himself is a moment that will pay off in the future. He knows that discipline today leads to freedom tomorrow. He knows that the more he builds, the less he will ever have to chase. A high-value man does not beg because he understands that desperation is unattractive. He does not beg because he knows that his time is too precious to be wasted on those who do not see his worth. He does not beg because he has built himself into someone who commands respect, who commands admiration, who commands success in every aspect of his life. A man who begs is a man who is powerless. A man who builds is a man who is unstoppable. A man who begs will always be at the mercy of those who decide whether or not to give him attention. A man who builds will always be in control because he creates his own reality, his own destiny, his own empire. A man who begs is forgotten. A man who builds is remembered. A man who ignores you is not always rejecting you. A man who ignores you is not always uninterested. A man who ignores you might just be the only man who truly understands what it means to love you. Because love is not about drowning you in attention. It is not about feeding your ego. It is not about proving something to you every second of the day. Love is about strength. It is about discipline. It is about control. And a man who truly understands love knows that sometimes the best way to show it is through silence. You have been conditioned to believe that love is loud, that love is obsessive, that love is desperate. But real love is not needy. Real love is not weak. Real love is not a constant performance of affection designed to make you feel validated. A man who is constantly chasing, constantly proving, constantly seeking your approval is not strong in his love. He is lost in his neediness. He does not love you. He needs you. And there is a massive difference between being needed and being loved. A man who ignores you does not do so because he does not care. A man who ignores you does so because he refuses to become weak in his love for you. He refuses to lose himself in you. He refuses to compromise his mission, his purpose, his discipline for the sake of temporary emotional satisfaction. He knows that love is not about proving himself every moment. Love is about showing up when it truly matters, not about performing for attention. You have been told that if a man loves you, he will prioritize you above all else. But the truth is, if a man truly loves you, he will prioritize his purpose above you. Because his purpose is what makes him a man. His purpose is what makes him strong, what makes him reliable, what makes him the kind of man who can protect, provide, and lead. If he abandons his purpose for you, he becomes weak. If he abandons his purpose for you, he becomes dependent. And a dependent man is not a man who can offer you real love. He is a man who will eventually burden you with his lack of direction. A man who ignores you is a man who has control over his emotions. He is not ruled by his impulses. He is not a slave to his need for validation. He is not afraid of silence, because in that silence he is building. In that silence, he is sharpening himself. In that silence, he is proving that he does not need constant reassurance to know his worth. And a man who does not need reassurance is a man who is truly strong. You think a man who showers you with attention is a man who truly loves you. But often that man is simply a man who is afraid of losing you. And a man who is afraid of losing you is not a man who is in control. A man who is afraid of losing you will eventually become a man who resents you. Because fear-based love is not love, it is attachment. And attachment is fragile. Attachment crumbles the moment it is tested. Attachment falls apart the moment it is not reciprocated. But a man who is strong in his love does not fear losing you because his love is not based on insecurity, it is based on strength. A man who ignores you is showing you that his world does not revolve around you. And that is exactly the kind of man you need. Because a man whose world revolves around you will suffocate you. He will expect you to be his everything. He will need you to complete him, to validate him, to reassure him every moment of every day. And that is not love. That is dependency. That is emotional weakness disguised as affection. And that kind of weakness will drain you until there is nothing left. A man who ignores you is a man who has mastered the art of restraint. He is a man who knows that true power does not lie in constantly proving himself, but in knowing when to step back, when to let things unfold naturally, when to allow space for attraction to grow instead of forcing it. Because attraction does not come from constant validation. Action comes from mystery, from confidence, from the ability to walk away and trust that what is meant for you will stay. A weak man cannot ignore you because he is addicted to your validation. He needs your response. He needs your attention. He needs to feel wanted, needed, chosen. But a man who is truly strong does not need anything from you. He chooses you, but he does not need you. And that difference is what makes him powerful. That difference is what makes him the kind of man who commands respect instead of begging for it. You believe that a man's love is measured by how much he chases you, but real love is not a chase. Real love is not desperation. Real love is knowing when to step back, when to be silent, when to let things unfold instead of forcing them. A man who ignores you is a man who is showing you that his life is full, that his time is valuable, that his energy is not something to be given away carelessly. And that is the kind of man who will truly elevate you, because he does not give his attention cheaply. A man who ignores you is a man who understands that his presence is valuable. He does not give it away easily. He does not throw it at people who do not appreciate it. He does not waste his energy proving himself to someone who does not already see his worth. He knows that his time is precious, and he spends it building, growing, becoming. That is why he does not chase. That is why he does not beg. That is why he does not crumble when you do not respond. Because he knows that his value is not determined by your reaction. It is determined by who he is, with or without you. A weak man makes you his priority at the expense of his own growth. A strong man makes his growth his priority, and in doing so, becomes the kind of man who is truly worthy of love. A weak man needs your validation to feel strong. A strong man is already strong, and that is why he does not need to constantly prove himself to you. A weak man thinks love is about always being present, always chasing, always giving. A strong man knows that love is about knowing when to step back, when to focus on himself, when to let things unfold instead of forcing them. If a man ignores you, he is showing you that he values his time, his energy, his focus. If a man ignores you, he is proving that he is not ruled by desperation. If a man ignores you, he is demonstrating that his love is not about neediness, but about strength. And strength is the foundation of real love. Strength is what separates men who are truly worthy from men who are simply desperate. Strength is what makes a man someone you can truly respect, truly admire, truly trust. A man who ignores you is a man who understands that love is not about chasing, it is about being. It is about embodying strength so fully that the right people are drawn to it without force. It is about having enough confidence in himself that he does not need to beg for attention. It is about knowing his worth so deeply that he does not fear silence, does not fear space, does not fear losing what is not meant for him. That is true love. That is true power. That is the kind of man who will not only love you, but elevate you, protect you, and make you see the difference between a man who is weak and a man who is truly strong. A man who ignores you is a man who refuses to be controlled by his emotions. He does not act out of desperation. He does not move from a place of weakness, and he does not allow the need for validation to dictate his actions. He understands that power is not in reacting, but in mastering his responses. He is not driven by impulse. He is driven by purpose. He knows that love does not mean giving himself away freely, because anything that is given too easily loses its value. A man who ignores you is a man who holds himself to a higher standard, a standard that says his presence is earned, not demanded. A weak man will seek attention as if his worth depends on it. He will flood your phone with messages. He will beg for your presence. He will prove himself over and over again until he has nothing left. He will mistake obsession for love, and in doing so he will lose the very thing that made him attractive in the first place. Because no woman truly desires a man who cannot stand on his own. No woman respects a man who crumbles the moment he is ignored. No woman is drawn to a man who is dependent on her for his sense of self. A man who ignores you is not a man who does not care. He is a man who refuses to be consumed by emotional weakness. A strong man does not chase because he knows that what is meant for him will stay. He does not beg because he knows his value does not decrease when someone fails to see it. He does not run after love because he knows love is not something that is caught. It is something that is cultivated, something that is built on strength, not on desperation. A man who ignores you is a man who is choosing himself first. And that is the only way he can ever truly be the kind of man who is worth choosing. A weak man will lose himself in pursuit of someone else. He will forget who he is, forget his purpose, forget his mission, all in an attempt to prove that he is worthy. But a man who is truly worthy never has to prove it. A man who is truly worthy knows that his presence is valuable, that his time is precious, that his energy is not to be given away to those who do not appreciate it. A man who ignores you is not playing a game, he is making a statement. A statement that says, I am not here to beg, I am not here to be an option, I am not here to be disrespected. A man who ignores you is not afraid to walk away. He is not afraid of what he might lose because he knows that anything he loses by standing in his power was never truly his to begin with. He is not afraid of silence because he understands that silence speaks louder than words. He is not afraid of space because he knows that space is where clarity is found, where attraction is built, where respect is cultivated. A man who ignores you is a man who values himself more than he values temporary validation. A weak man will break the moment he is ignored. He will question himself, doubt himself, lose his confidence, and seek reassurance in ways that only push people further away. But a strong man stands firm. He does not waver. He does not crumble under pressure. He does not need constant reassurance because his confidence is not dependent on external factors. A man who ignores you is showing you that his self-worth is not something that can be shaken by temporary circumstances. He is proving that he is not a slave to his emotions, that he is not desperate for attention, that he is not the kind of man who needs to be seen to know his own worth. A weak man will let his emotions control him. He will react without thinking, he will chase without direction, he will love without discipline. But a strong man is a master of himself. He understands that the ability to hold back, to be patient, to let things unfold naturally, is a sign of true power. He does not force what is not meant for him. He does not cling to what does not serve him. He does not waste his energy on things that do not align with his vision. A man who ignores you is a man who has chosen control over chaos, discipline over desperation, strength over weakness. A man who ignores you is not a man who lacks love. He is a man who knows that real love is not about obsession, it is about balance. It is about knowing when to give and when to step back. It is about understanding that attraction is not built through constant validation, but through respect, through space, through presence that is valuable enough to be missed. A man who ignores you is a man who is showing you that he is not desperate for your approval, that he does not need to be constantly reassured, that he is not afraid of being alone, and that is what makes him truly powerful. A weak man will try to prove his worth through actions that scream desperation. He will overcompensate, he will overgive, he will overexplain, he will try to make you see his value instead of knowing that his value speaks for itself. But a strong man does not try to prove, he simply is. His energy commands respect. His presence is felt even in his absence. His confidence is unshaken. His self-respect is untouchable. His discipline is unwavering. A man who ignores you is a man who understands that his power lies in restraint, in patience, in the ability to let things come to him rather than chasing what is not his. A weak man will lose everything trying to keep someone who does not see his worth. A strong man will let go without hesitation. He will not beg for love. He will not plead for attention. He will not negotiate his value. A man who ignores you is a man who has already decided that he will not lower himself for the sake of temporary comfort. He is a man who is willing to wait for what is truly his. A man who is willing to sacrifice momentary validation for long-term respect. A man who knows that the only way to truly win is to never betray himself. A man who ignores you is showing you that he is not desperate to be liked. He is not afraid to disappoint. He is not here to be convenient, to be easy, to be available at all times. He is here to build something real, something strong, something that is not based on weak emotions but on true power. He is not interested in temporary connections that drain his energy. He is focused on his mission, on his vision, on becoming the kind of man who attracts not by chasing, but by standing so firmly in his worth that the right things naturally gravitate toward him. A man who ignores you is not heartless. He is not unfeeling. He is not cruel. He is simply a man who understands that his love is not to be wasted on those who do not recognize it. He is a man who knows that his time is his most valuable asset, that his energy is sacred, that his presence is a privilege. He does not give himself away freely because he knows that anything that is too easily given is rarely respected. He moves with purpose, with intention, with the understanding that true power is not in seeking validation, but in becoming so undeniable that validation becomes irrelevant. A man who ignores you is not playing a game. He is not manipulating. He is not seeking control. He is simply proving that he is in control of himself, that he does not need external approval to know his worth, that he is not afraid to walk away from what does not align with his purpose, that he is not driven by emotion but by discipline, that he is not weak in his love but strong enough to know that love, real love, is not about desperation. It is about power, about respect, about the ability to hold back, to stand firm, to choose himself first, because only a man who chooses himself first can ever truly be worthy of choosing someone else. A man who ignores you is a man who understands the power of detachment. He knows that the moment he becomes too attached, he loses control, and the moment he loses control, he becomes weak. A weak man chases, a weak man begs, a weak man gives himself away for free, but a strong man remains in control of his emotions, his actions, his energy. He does not allow the need for validation to consume him. He does not allow the fear of loss to dictate his movements. He does not seek approval because he already knows his worth. A man who ignores you is not a man who does not care. He is a man who refuses to be controlled by anything outside of himself. A weak man fears silence. He fears the emptiness, the unknown, the uncertainty. He fills the gaps with words, with desperate attempts to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be wanted. But a strong man embraces silence because he understands that true power is found in restraint. He does not fear being alone because he knows that solitude is where he sharpens himself, where he builds, where he becomes even more dangerous, even more disciplined, even more valuable. A man who ignores you is a man who understands that his energy is sacred, that his time is his most valuable currency, and that giving too much of himself away weakens his ability to command respect. A weak man will throw himself at a woman, hoping she will validate his worth. He will seek her attention like a starving man begging for scraps. He will believe that love is something to be earned through constant effort, through proving, through chasing. But a strong man knows that love is not about effort. It is about alignment. It is about standing so firmly in his power that the right person recognizes his worth without him having to prove it. A man who ignores you is a man who refuses to chase what is not meant for him. He is a man who knows that desperation repels and that true attraction is built in space, in absence, in the ability to let things come instead of forcing them. A weak man believes that the more he gives, the more he will be loved. He believes that his worth is determined by how much he sacrifices, how much he pleases, how much he shows up. But a strong man knows that his worth is not found in giving himself away. It is found in how much he can hold back. A man who ignores you is a man who understands that restraint is the highest form of power, that the ability to withhold is what creates desire, that giving everything too soon kills attraction. He knows that what is truly valuable is never freely available, that the rarest things in life are the most desired, and that if he does not protect his presence, it will be taken for granted. A weak man seeks instant gratification. He wants immediate attention, immediate validation, immediate reassurance. He does not understand that patience is power, that waiting is where the strongest foundation is built, that true strength is in the ability to control his impulses. But a strong man moves differently. He understands that time is his greatest ally, that space creates clarity, that distance creates desire. A man who ignores you is not acting out of neglect. He is acting out of discipline. He is allowing the energy to shift, allowing the dynamic to develop naturally, allowing attraction to grow in the space between. A weak man reacts to every emotion. He is controlled by his feelings, swayed by his impulses, dictated by his desires. He does not know how to step back, how to observe, how to move with precision. But a strong man is calculated. He does not act without intention. He does not speak without purpose. He does not give his energy to situations that do not serve him. A man who ignores you is a man who is making a statement, not through words, but through action. He is showing you that he is not desperate, that he is not available on demand, that he is not someone who can be pulled in any direction. A weak man will prioritize love over his purpose. He will make a woman his world, his mission, his reason for existing. But a strong man knows that his purpose comes first, that his mission is his foundation, that a man without purpose is a man without direction. A man who ignores you is a man who is choosing his vision over temporary emotions, who is investing in himself before investing in someone else, who is proving that he will never compromise his growth for the sake of being liked. He knows that a woman does not truly respect a man who puts her above himself. She may enjoy the attention, she may appreciate the devotion, but deep down, she will never admire him, never truly desire him, never see him as a leader. Because a leader does not abandon his mission for love. He builds himself first and lets love follow. A weak man fears losing a woman. He fears that if he does not constantly prove himself, she will leave, she will lose interest, she will find someone else. But a strong man does not fear loss. He does not beg for attention. He does not seek constant reassurance. Because he knows that what is meant for him will stay, that what is real cannot be forced, that true love is not built on desperation but on respect. A man who ignores you is a man who is testing the strength of the connection, who is seeing whether it can survive in the absence of constant validation, who is proving that he is not afraid to walk away if he is not truly valued. A weak man needs to be needed. He craves the feeling of being indispensable, of being the one who is always there, always available, always proving himself. But a strong man does not need to be needed. He needs to be respected. A man who ignores you is a man who is setting a boundary, who is refusing to be taken for granted, who is showing that his time is not free, that his presence is not guaranteed, that he is a man who must be earned. He knows that when something is given too easily, it is never truly appreciated. That if he is always available, he becomes ordinary. That if he does not set the standard, he will be treated as an option instead of a priority. A weak man lets emotions dictate his life. A strong man lets discipline dictate his emotions. A weak man fears rejection. A strong man embraces it as a filter, as a test, as a way to separate what is real from what is temporary. A weak man will break himself trying to win someone over. A strong man will walk away if his presence is not valued. A man who ignores you is a man who understands that love should never come at the cost of his self-respect. That no connection is worth losing himself over. That if he has to lower his standards to be accepted, then he is already lost. A weak man will settle for whatever attention he can get. A strong man will wait for what is truly his. A weak man will let his emotions lead him into weakness. A strong man will use his mind to lead him into power. A weak man will give himself away too soon. A strong man will make sure his presence is a privilege, not a convenience. A man who ignores you is not weak, he is in control. He is not playing games, he is setting the rules. He is not afraid of love, he is simply refusing to be consumed by it. Because a man who truly loves himself first will never lose himself in the pursuit of someone else.